You're listening to and or watching A Fistful of Vinyl. I'm Alec, and my guest today is William Tyler. He just played an incredible session for us.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And so you just played 4 or 5 songs. You kind of pulled from different eras of your catalog. You reached back and pulled a little bit of John Fahey.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll admit, I kind of started with your music, digging into, I guess, what's sort of traditionally called American primitive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you identify with that as like a sort of like a genre, or what would you say differentiates you?
Somebody asked me in the last year to describe like what my music is, and I came up with this term rural. That's a very hard word to say, so I should probably think of a different one. Rural New Age.
Okay.
Because I feel like American primitive, it's definitely the world I came out of. Not out of, but like that, I think it denotes a certain thing that like to me feels a little limiting just in terms of like its reach, because I think there is obviously a world primarily based around Tacoma Records with Fahey and Robbie Basho and guys like that. But I've always thought it was kind of funny because like the primitive part, I know that it's trying to summon kind of like the Harry Smith world of like pre-World War II, country and blues music, but I never really found it to be primitive in the sense of it's actually really hard to play.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. But I do think, I think the shadow, so to speak, of Fahey still looms over a lot of that music, but so does, for me, like Leo Kottke and Jorma from Hot Tuna and Jefferson Airplane, and Sandy Bull and Michael Hedges, Ry Cooder, Bill Frisell, a lot of Sonny Sherrick, a lot of people that might not fit in the, I look at guitar as a very broad thing. I mean, Jerry Garcia is one of my biggest influences. So is Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. So it brings in a lot of things, I think.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip this question asking if John Fahey and Leo Kottke are your inspirations.
They probably are a little bit to everybody who picks up an acoustic guitar at this point.
At this point, yeah, directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned before that your grandfather and your father were kind of your introduction to music. And I know both your parents were songwriters, right?
Yes. So my parents were songwriters, still are. Also work in music publishing. Mm-hmm. They moved from Mississippi to Nashville in the mid-'70s. And they got to see a side of Nashville that is kind of like what I think most of us would want to think Nashville is. Willie Nelson and Bobby Bare, Waylon Jennings, Shel Silverstein. I mean, those really were the most powerful guys in music back then. So it was a much smaller town, and the fanciest restaurant and bar was like a TGI Fridays that was across the street from the big rock club where all the country guys played. But it was also way more progressive, probably in its own way. But the 70s was just like that, I think, Now, conversely, my grandfather, or my mom's father, was a jazz musician and ragtime and in swing bands in the 30s. And so he moved into, like, after World War II, he got really into commercial real estate, and, he did really well. But the musician part of him was always there, and he was always playing piano around the house when we would go down there for holidays. And so yeah, that was, and he also was really good friends with. He had a lot to do with getting fundraising for the Jackson, Mississippi Symphony Orchestra. So I remember as a kid getting to go with him down to the orchestra hall and look at the instruments and ask questions about them. And I think that was really that moment. I almost remember that day, going down and asking what is the timpani, what is the bassoon, and I think I've always been kind of fascinated with that in music ever since then. And I was really young then, but yeah. So yeah, I owe both sides of my family a lot for that.
And was that also sort of your introduction into the John Fahey sound and American?
No, I mean it's funny because I didn't find Fahey until probably the last couple of years of high school, early, after, I didn't go to college, but we had this thing that certain people of a certain generation will know. It's called the Spin Alternative Record Guide, and it was actually a really progressive book because it was like this encyclopedia of everything from, Meat Puppets, Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., but then also like Sun City Girls, Can, Sun Ra, John Fahey. That's where I found out about a lot of like, quote, weird music. And they had John Fahey CDs at the library. But I'd always been interested in folk music, of a certain era, like the Depression. I get, like Woody Guthrie and, Celtic folk music and Delta blues. So like when I was a kid, I was into that stuff. So even though I didn't like learn about like that quote American primitives movement or whatever until much later, that really resonated with me melodically. That's kind of like the way my brain works, I guess.
And this music that's sort of categorized as being very like non-lyrical, non-verbal, still carries with it such a narrative quality, it seems.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this came out during the session in that you write your songs sort of with like a story or at least like an experience in mind. Mm-hmm. So does that come from like more of like an experiential places, and like these are things that you've times that you've been through, ideas that you've encountered yourself? How much of it comes from like a more maybe fictional side of things? And like to what degree does that like inform, I guess, the tone of the music, or how do you kind of transition that into, just strings on a guitar from words or ideas?
It's probably a mix of both. I think I'm very deliberate in my wanting to not necessarily tell stories, because I think that's it's hard. There is a school of there's a type of telling a narrative through going from classical music up through jazz and everything, where it's like, this is the New World Symphony. It's meant to evoke the United States and this Russian guy, or I can't remember if Dvorak was Russian or not, but his experience here, or like there's Art Ensemble of Chicago will make a record that's very, supposed to be very explicit about this aspect of the African American experience in American history, things like that. Having said that, I would like to do that in my own way with music, but I think I'm kind of also walking the line between, pop rock music and more, I would say, orchestral music. I feel like New Age kind of, in its own way, is a good place for those kind of worlds to sort of live, so to speak. But I have a lot of other interests. I mean, I read a lot of books. I've always been very fascinated with history and geography and just sociology in general, philosophy and religion. I mean, so there's a lot of things that I want to evoke, and I don't write words. So yeah, I have to be kind of all over the place with those things, and that's why I tend to name pieces after ideas or things that are evocative to me. And I don't think the music's meant to evoke the same emotion in somebody. I mean, the one that you get the most is that, like, oh, it's like reminds me of driving through the West, or this sounds like a soundtrack to a Western. I mean, I feel like that's the one that I get the most, which is fine. I mean, I'm into that too, but I don't know. I think instrumental music lends itself to a different kind of immersion than lyrical music.
Yeah, perhaps it sort of creates a scenario in which the audience is the final collaborator.
Yes,
and they get to apply
absolutely.
their meaning to it.
Absolutely. And in a way, I think that's what keeps it from being commercial, so to speak, but maybe a little more universal, actually, I think. And it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see, like, where it goes. I mean, when I was in high school, the music that really kind of got me out of the zone that I was in, which was power pop, punk, hardcore, like all that stuff. That was, dudes with short hair. I did not listen to the Grateful Dead in high school, I'll say that. But I went and, bands like Tortoise were really, really important Mogwai, and they didn't sing. And what they were doing was kind of jazz. I mean, Tortoise certainly are I would consider that just to be an extension of jazz, but they were playing rock clubs and they were dudes with tattoos, and it kind of was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. And then you go check out a Miles Davis record, and then you're like, oh wow, this is way more, I don't know, it's just expansive. So I feel like there was a time in the 90s and early 2000s when it was, I won't say fashionable, but at least not as weird to be playing instrumental music. And there's elements of that now. I mean, he's wearing a Tycho shirt, and I was thinking, because I did some shows with them last fall, and
you have no idea how happy you just made Kirk.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, it was cool because they're a couple of the guys in that band were fans, which was kind of awesome to find out. And I only did 2 shows with them, so it wasn't like a good segment, sample segment.
You don't need to downplay it. It's still awesome.
No, I know. But it was just awesome. I was like, God, I would love to do have a band and do a tour with these guys, because I think their crowd would obviously was got it, And I've also done opening shows for more Americana type artists who sing, obviously. And I think if you frame it a certain way there, that crowd can get it too, because most country music fans at least have a soft spot for bluegrass and for Chet Atkins and that kind of guitar music. So I think that what I do can work in different settings.
Yeah,
it just has to be kind of presented the right way.
Definitely, and I think the context in which you experience it definitely informs the sort of I think the narrative that you get out of it.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning before, as you were playing "Last Residents of Westfall," that's a song to which I kind of have my own story association.
Yeah, right. So what's your take on it?
All right. So it's not a sheriff in a town. So I have my phone to wake me up with music every day, and it just picks a random song from somewhere within my library, and that song came on to wake me up, and I didn't wake up right away, and I was in that kind of
in between state,
hypnopopic state,
right.
And in the dream state, I just sort of crafted this narrative. So if you picture a character, something like Joaquin Phoenix in Inherent Vice, it's Vietnam era, and we kind of meet him as he's walking along this dusty road, northern West Coast in America, and he's got a bag, he's got it's clear he's carrying pretty much everything he owns on him, and it's not very much,
right.
And he's crossing these fields, and they're beautiful, and the sun's shining, and you don't really get where he's going until he hits this big river, this wide 200-meter wide river, and he packs all of his stuff into a trash bag and inflates it and ties a string around it and swims across this river, and he's crossing over into Canada. And because it's a dream, and I know what's going on in my dreams most of the time, it's that moment that I realized he's draft dodging. He's leaving the country, so he doesn't have to. And he crosses into Canada and kind of dries himself off and lays on the banks of the river. And then once he's dry, he kind of goes and crosses over this mountain range. And on his way down the other side, he comes to this cabin, just kind of tucked into the hillside, and just beautiful long grass uphill and downhill of it, big sky country. And out of the cabin comes an older man with a beard, and it's him, but him in 20 to 30 years.
Right.
And these 2 kids come bounding out, and it's him as a young teenager, and him as an 8 or 9-year-old, and everyone's happy to see him, he's happy to see them, and it's just kind of this interesting I don't know the meaning behind it or anything, but it was such a articulately crafted story for something that happened when I was not even conscious.
Wow.
And your song was the background for that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really I love knowing that. I mean, I do. I personally really don't listen to much lyrical music. I mean, I feel I will when I'm around friends. We're talking about new records, and and then I'll listen to. I listen to this station a lot. I'll listen to pop and modern hip hop station. Just to be I just want to know what that is. It's oh, that's the song I'm hearing all the time,
sure,
and wherever, and it's just good to have some context for it. And sometimes I like it, but I do mainly listen to instrumental music. I mean, classical, ambient, a lot of jazz. So I get a lot from instrumental music of other people. You know, it's not like, you know, I genuinely like it. Like it inspires me to, you know, I feel like, you know, melodies don't come, they come out of something. I mean, they come out of the collective unconscious, if nothing else. And, you know, there's definitely been times where I've written something and be like, oh yeah, that's on top of this. And yeah, sometimes I'm like, maybe I can get away with it. Sometimes I have to change it. But yeah, that's good to know. I like hearing that. And it's, yeah, I mean, like I said, there's no invalid interpretation of like what a piece of music makes you feel. I do think it's interesting, like that story or your dream or whatever. I don't think about my music, what it means to other people really ever. But it is interesting how it, like I've said this already, like there's always this contextual thing of like something about the West. Like it's never like, yeah, it's like reminds me of like a New York City subway ride in like 1985, or you know what I mean, like, or you know what I mean, like it's not
okay.
Yeah, I mean it's. I feel like there is something. It's funny that I moved out here. I moved out here about 6 months ago, you know, but I've always lived in the South. Other than now living in California, but yeah, there is something like about the music I do that I think lends itself to that kind of just thinking about the West. Maybe just because it's so wide open and expansive.
Oh, definitely.
You know, yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard to abstract like the image of the West from your music. So don't be surprised if that's like a lot of the feedback that you get kind of surrounding that.
Well, I wish there were more Westerns being made because I would love to try to score one.
Oh man.
And I feel like Nick Cave and Warren Ellis kind of have the market cornered on it now,
yeah.
And they're pretty awesome. So can't really act disappointed about that. But
no, it's.
But if anyone out there is listening and wants to direct a Western, I'd be really stoked about trying to score it.
Man, if this happens, like I just want a part in the Western.
I mean, it could be like Paris, Texas. It doesn't have to be like a shoot 'em up Western. Just something that's set in the West.
Yeah, no, perfect. I mean, like, I don't think your music has a violent quality anyway. Like,
no, but it's funny because I'm a pretty anxious, existentially tortured person. So I feel every time people come up to me like, I had such a bad day and your music made me really relax, and I was just like, cool, because I'm never relaxed. So that's awesome.
Glad it's working for somebody.
Yeah, glad it's working for somebody else.
Well, I want to kind of get an idea. You've been involved in a bunch of different musical projects.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask about your albums first. So
okay,
you've got Behold the Spirit from 2010.
Spirit, right? Yep.
You've got Impossible Truth from 2013. You've got Modern Country from 2016. I wanted to kind of know about like the evolution between those as far as like what you were trying to accomplish with them and like where you sort of were in your own musical development when creating those.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I think Behold the Spirit was recorded in what I would consider like a void. Like I did it with a friend of mine who worked at a studio in Nashville. We did it off the clock, so to speak. Like if he didn't have a session booked on a weekend, like a country session, like we would go in there and just do it. And so it was really fun because it took like months to do it, but just in like 2 or 3 day spurts. And then I had it, and you know, like I didn't really know who to send it to. I mean, only a certain number of labels put out instrumental guitar records, and everybody I sent it to never replied, except Tompkins Square. And Josh, who owns Tompkins Square, flipped out over it and put it out, and then suddenly people were paying attention to it. So that was just, I didn't have an agenda with that at all. I think with most people when they have their first record, it's probably very similar. It's just like, I hope anyone else in the world likes this. Because I think it's good, but, you know, Possible Truth, you know, was like, there was a little bit of a precedent set in whatever small way, and it being on Merge rather than Tompkins Square changed the conversation a little bit, because it's like, okay, now you're in with more indie rock artists label as opposed to a label that's predominantly guitar records and archival music. And I think with making that record, I wanted to have it be less about acoustic guitar, because I wanted to move away from this American primitive conversation, at least at the time. Most of them are essentially still solo guitar tracks, but more of them are electric. I mean, it's not a huge leap there. And with modern country, I think it was like, let's go a step further beyond that. I think I had been really thinking about ensemble music, and, you know, like, the kind of stuff that was exciting me was like a lot of the German music in the 70s, like Neu and Can and Popova and Kraftwerk. And then also listening to, like, you know, stuff like Bill Frisell's Nashville record and 70s country, and trying to see if there was maybe a way of like blending those worlds sonically. But I mean, being modern country is the first time I've done a record with like a band, and we tracked it live, and that was just a completely different approach too. So I don't think each record I make is going to be some wildly different, you know, manifesto. But I mean, it'd be cool if they were, because I mean, I sort of respect artists more who do that kind of stuff. Even if that only means putting out a record every couple of years or every 3 years or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And you've been involved in a handful of projects. We actually presented a Lambchop show a few months ago at the Bootleg Theater.
Oh yeah, I wasn't in town for that, but that's cool that y'all did that. Yeah.
I didn't find out that you were in Lambchop until I was at that show, and my friend goes, "Where's William Tyler?" I was like,
oh, that's funny.
I was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, I haven't been in the band in like 7 years.
Oh, okay. Then,
but
cool. I'm glad he's the one who was misinformed.
Yeah. No, but it's cool. I mean, well, it's something that's a talking point. I mean, it's like, you know, I played with the Silver Jews and I played with Lambchop. And, you know, I to be completely honest, I kind of wish that wasn't part of the conversation, because I don't think it really informs what I do now. But I also valued my time playing with those groups and respect everyone involved. And, you know, to be honest, I mean, Lambchop particularly, I think, playing in that band, and the age when I joined, I was very young. I was like I was 20. So like I didn't know a lot about anything. Not that I do now, but I think kind of discovering bands like Tortoise and Yellow Tango and kind of more experimental stuff, and then with Lambchop actually getting to like share bills with those bands, be like, whoa! It just kind of like, it was kind of a mind. You know, it was just like, yeah, it was like what I was telling you earlier about going to see Tortoise and be like, oh yeah, like this is more interesting than, you know, the music I'm listening to. Not that I don't like that music anymore, but it wasn't the Ramones. Right. You know, it's like, I like the Ramones, but
it's a departure.
It's a departure.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like one of those things, like suddenly everything like was in Technicolor instead of black and white. And so, you know, Lambchop has certainly in my life had a huge role in that, because it being in that band exposed me not just to a lot of other music and older musicians, but, you know, other ways of making music. Yeah.
And Silver Jews as well in that same token.
Yeah, although Silver Jews is really about David's songs, and the band is a construct. I mean, it's not a band. Lambchop is really Kirk, but creatively, but he can't do it alone. I mean, it's still a collective. The Silver Jews experience was fun, but definitely felt more like a straight sideman role. And, you know, but I met a lot of people that I'm still friends with and I collaborate with through that group. So,
what about Tim, Chad, and Sherry?
Well, Tim, Chad, and Sherry is, I think, one of the most underrated rock bands of the last 20 years, but nobody knows about them. But that's Brian Kotzer.
I do research, man.
You do research. So Brian Kotzer, who played drums in the Silver Jews and plays with me currently, on and off. Not as much now that I don't live in Nashville. That's his group. I think it's incredible. I think it's like Ween or something. Like, it's just, you know, heavy metal, soft rock, Prince here, you know, Black Sabbath here. I mean, I think what Brian does is amazing. I hope he does more.
Just a sort of crazy cocktail of all these different influences and genres all kind of
it's kind of like any band on drugs, and just make that a genre.
I like that. I like the Ween comparison too.
Yeah, I love Ween. I think that was a big portal, I think, for a lot of people. I missed him. I kind of didn't find out about him until I was older, but like, I feel like my friends who are into Ween at a young age, like, probably have way cooler record collections because of it. Because it was just like nobody liked that.
You got to be kind of jealous of them if they got to that early. I'm in the same boat as you. Or like I found out about it like second half of college. I was like, I would have been so much cooler in high school if I'd known about this.
Yeah. I kind of rebelled against not rebelled, but I went to a high school that was like a private school. It was like very like a lot of artsy kids and, like, create your own curriculum and all that kind of stuff. But basically the cool kids, were really into like Fish and the Dead and Dave Matthews and all that stuff. And so I tried for like 1 year to really get into that, because Pink Floyd was a common thing. Like I always loved Pink Floyd. I never stopped liking them. But I was just like, this stuff's so cheesy. And like these guys are all like, they're so like, I don't know. They were kind of like the jocks, like the hippies at my school were kind of like jocks, or like maybe I was just younger and I was intimidated by everybody. But that was when I decided to go the 180 and cut my hair off and only listen to music with like loud guitars. Now it's kind of I feel like I'm living kind of in the middle, so to speak, with what I listen to.
What about Paper Hats? Because I understand that was the original name that you performed under, right? And you
released
a couple records for that.
I did one record with Paper Hats, Deseret Canyon, that actually got reissued by Merge a couple years ago, just under my name. That's when I started making music again. Probably I was like 24, 25, and I was just, it was all home recording, 8-track, 4-track, mostly experimental, like a lot of not even really like songs, more sound collage stuff. And the guitar stuff just kind of evolved out of that. But I think at the time I was sort of like, I need a moniker. I don't want it to be, I was thinking about like Six Organs of Admittance, the Mountain Goats, like even if it's one guy, or Guided by Voices or whatever, like, you need to hide behind a name, so to speak. But I kind of feel like that even when I started doing shows, it'd be like Paper Hats, parentheses, William Tyler. So it just became a thing where nobody really is buying into your pseudonym. So, that was when Josh put out Behold the Spirit. That was like, it was like, look, you just need to use your name. And that was good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It makes you, more accessible. And that's always, like I was saying before, that's always one of the things that we try to accomplish on our show is to make the sort of human side of the artist a little bit more apparent to people who might think that they're only musician or only celebrity. I have one more history question. It's going to be a softball. So you were born December 25th.
Right.
Did you ever get fewer presents because your birthday and Christmas were the same day? Did you ever feel like you kind of got gypped? Or
Probably when I was a kid, but like when you're a kid, you eat fast food and play video games and you are really selfish. I don't know. I mean, I guess my point is like, I don't care. Like now, for sure, I'm at the age where I'm happy that they keep occurring. But
that's a good perspective.
But my parents were very, very generous. No, yeah, my like immediate and slightly extended family would always like kind of double down. So no, I think it was probably the opposite. I got more. I got spoiled.
Nice. I think it's cool that you differentiate from like the kid perspective, because I remember being in elementary school and being really jealous of my friends who had like one like Christian or Catholic parent and one Jewish parent, because then they got 2 holidays in which they got gifts. I was like, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Never like mathematically that made sense to me at the time. But
it's funny. That's a good conversation point too, because I had a lot of friends growing up that had like one parent who was Jewish, one parent who was Christian, and then there were a lot, and there was a pretty high proportion of Jewish kids at my high school, because it was at the time it was like the only non-Christian affiliated private school in Nashville, which says something about the cultural climate of Tennessee, which was a whole other conversation. But like growing up as a kid, I was around like all the Jewish holidays, and I was always like jealous. I was like, man, why don't we get like, Hanukkah seemed more fun, I was like, we just have one day, it's like dominated by
a little bit.
Yeah, spread it out. And do we really need Santa Claus? I mean, I don't know. Anyway. Christmas is fine. I love Christmas. I actually do genuinely like Christmas as a holiday. I love winter. I think the music's awesome. I love the John Fahey Christmas record.
Nice. Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite films. So is Scrooged. Yeah, it's a good
Very
holiday.
Cool. Let's see. Okay, so I have a couple more sort of like more music-centric ones.
Yeah.
There's always a couple questions I try to hit
Yeah.
in these interviews, and one of them is asking artists about like their favorite lyrics. But I feel like the more appropriate question for you is like what are your favorite, like if we're considering an instrumental, what are your favorite like kind of like bars or phrases or riffs within music?
Oh, well, that's good. Wow. That's really hard because there are moments where I would say like there are like moments in Miles Davis's music and Coltrane's music and Duke Ellington, where like I would be like, this is some of my, but there's also like moments in Michael Rother, who's the guitar player in Noi, like some of his melodic phrases are some of my favorites. There are, all of the Western canon of classical music is really important to me. Like it's Bach, Beethoven, Debussy, like I said, Satie, and then then that's not even keeping in mind like folk melodies, like Methodist hymns and Delta blues melodies and Appalachian melodies, Celtic folk melodies. They're all just kind of traditional at this point. I mean, I don't know. I am drawn to melody. I mean, like I was joking with this guy a couple weeks ago, where I was like, man, I really want to make like a metal, like an instrumental, like metal record or something. He was just like, well, your songs are too happy. They were too melodic. And I was like, and then he was just like, because he like writes a lot of like more like Sabbath type riff stuff, and he was just like, just make all your songs minor key. And I was like, oh yeah, that's like would be a really easy way to do it.
This is Missionary Ridge and drop C.
Yeah, well, it's just in drop C. It's just C major. So maybe if it was minor, because I only have like 3 or 4 songs in minor keys. But anyway, I just thought that was a funny conversation.
Let's see. Talk to me about your equipment. So you played acoustic today. You said it was like a Martin
it's
from
a
the
50s D18 that I inherited from my uncle, my mom's brother. He had it in a attic in Virginia for like 20 years and hadn't touched it. And when he was like, if you want to take this to a luthier and try to get it in playable condition, he gave it to me. And so it's like the only material possession I have that I actually feel some sort of like genuine emotional connection to.
Have you named it?
I haven't named it. I know that's lame. I have named it.
I don't know. Naming it might be lame. You should do whatever makes you happy.
I liked what Jerry Garcia always named like wolf and like tiger. Like I always kind of thought it was a little. I didn't like the guys who named their guitars after women. I thought that was like, that's a whole other.
Be a little bit more creative.
Well, I don't have a sexual relationship with my guitar.
You heard it here first.
Might have a spiritual relationship with it, so maybe a spirit animal. We should come up with a spirit animal. Actually, I'm gonna call it mole.
Mole?
Yeah, because I always felt like
right.
the mole was kind of my spirit animal.
I like that. Mole.
They're blind and they live underground, so yeah.
Well, that's okay. So we're doing. I mentioned this D20 thing that we're doing. I think now is probably the perfect time.
Okay. Yeah.
To try our new gimmick. Seems dismissive. I think this is going to make our interviews a little bit more fun, a little bit more. I was talking about trying to bring out like the human side of people.
Right.
So I have a list here of 20 questions that we've written up that could basically be asked of anybody.
Okay.
One of which you just answered because you told me about your spirit animal.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't roll a...
We can roll again if we land on that.
Yeah, I think... All right. Good luck. Here, toss it out here so somebody
wait,
can...
yeah. So it's transparent.
All right.
What is it?
3.
Okay.
All right, cool. What's your favorite non-traditional pizza topping?
Oh, man.
Oh, this is supposed to be an easy one.
Well, I love pizza. This is the problem with pizza. I have a... I'm pretty traditional when it comes to pizza. Well, let me just ask you this: like, what would be is jalapeno is a traditional topping, right?
Interesting. I would have called that non-traditional.
Okay, well
that's probably my non-traditional answer.
That would be
actually.
my non-traditional favorite.
Jalapeno.
I don't like pineapple.
Ooh, you're in that camp.
Yeah, dude.
Are you? I mean, like, are you gung ho about it? There's a whole argument on the internet about people.
I actually have
about
strong
whether or not.
feelings about mixing cheese and fruit. I think it's disgusting.
Okay. I would...
Apple and brie is really the only exception I make for that rule.
If you're ever feeling particularly open-minded, watermelon with feta. On a beach.
I don't like feta cheese. I'm also really weird about cheese.
Okay.
I really only like pizza, and everything else about cheese kind of grosses me out.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, it's cultured milk. I get it.
But I like milk. So
I'm
not
but
anti-dairy.
you don't like it when it's spoiled, I imagine. I don't want to make any assumptions about you, but...
No, I like it. I'm pretty...
You're
I was going to say I'm meat and potatoes about milk, but no, I mean, like, I like cereal with milk. That's like, I can't make the almond soy jump with milk yet.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't know.
No, this is good. This is exactly what I wanted to accomplish with this.
Cool. So jalapenos, man, I'll eat that on anything.
Yeah, man. Cool. The ramen place where we're going, I mentioned it's a little bit extra for spicy, but it's worth it.
Oh, right. That's right. 75 cents.
75 cents. Something like that. I'll pay whatever above that.
But really, what does 75 cents buy anymore other than that?
Other than like a spoonful of chili paste?
Yeah, I mean, you can't... Buys you like 30 minutes and a parking meter.
It's most of a song on iTunes if you're still buying music.
Let's please not get into like the depressing cost.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just
too close.
No,
to
actually,
home.
yes, it will buy a song. Yeah,
Most of a song.
Most of a song. Yeah.
What was the point where you started actually being able to live off your music? And how'd that feel?
You know, I would go in between when I was touring a lot with bands. You know, I would always usually have a job when I got back, like mostly service industry jobs. But yeah, I remember I was working at this coffee house for a really, really long time as one of many other freelance things I was doing, and I quit that job right around the time Behold the Spirit came out, and I haven't had a job outside of music since then. So that's been almost 7 years. That's pretty good.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
A lot of the artists we have in here, like, they work a job that they don't like so that they can tour and like try to make money.
I would do that. I mean, I'm not ever gonna do anything else other than this. I mean, but or some version of it. But yeah, I mean, I've made it work this long.
Yeah, it sounds like you do whatever you need to permit this to be the central part of your life.
I think that's for any artist in whatever medium. I think that's kind of like just the plan,
the expectation.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you find your music? Are you challenged by your own music?
Yes. Like what?
Cool.
Like technically? Or?
I guess I pictured that being so much more like profound. Like, yeah, like okay, maybe when you're composing, like, what obstacles do you face, and do you kind of like face them again when you're performing?
Yeah, my technical limitations, absolutely.
What about as far as like creativity? Like, is this something that like flows out of you, or is it like you have to kind of like sit and mull over the same thing over and over until it has like it sounds like what you're hearing in your head? Or
no, I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm hearing an idea that I can't play, that I literally just can't execute until I've practiced a lot, and even then I have a hard time with it. But in terms of like flow of ideas, like I have ideas all the time. I mean, I try to record everything I come up with, even if it's just a riff, you know. And I usually, that could be one a day, you know, at least. So a lot of stuff doesn't get used, you know, but
there's record of it at the very least. It's
on my phone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the important thing is when you come up with a good idea, you make sure you hold on to it. You don't.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, I used to be a little more cavalier about it, and you forget them. I mean, even if it's just like, you know, you're playing, go see a movie, 2 hours later, you forget your guitar part. I know, and that's just how it just goes back into the ether, just like so much.
It's, I mean, like radio, ephemeral.
It's ephemeral. Yep.
Yeah. Do you think it's important that an artist is challenged by their own music?
Absolutely. I think you're not challenging yourself in any way. I think you're being spiritually, intellectually dishonest to yourself, and probably means you're not doing something that's actually going to resonate with people. Because I think people need to be challenged as well, and you can't challenge. Your music has to, or art or whatever, has to generate an effect on you before it's going to generate an effect on anybody else, I think. Otherwise, you're just faking it.
I think that's astute.
Yeah.
You got a residency, Zebulon.
At
Silver Lake.
Zebulon, yeah.
Monday nights for the month of August.
Yep. So the next one, of course, I don't know when.
I don't know when this is probably gonna come out after August.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
But we're gonna work to release one of your songs before the end of
did
August.
an awesome residency at Zebulon, y'all.
It was
Great.
packed every single
It
night.
was packed every night. No, we just did the first one. It was really, really great. It was really fun and collaborative, and I had a couple of other musicians, Sean Smith and Juliana Barwick, and they did solo sets, and then they came up and did a song with me, and it was great. It was really collaborative and fun, and it was free, so it was like that kind of, you can't be more democratic than that.
Yeah, aside from the music, free is also music to people's ears.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. We can go and wrap this up. You've kind of already answered like what's on your playlist right now, it seems like. But if there's a couple artists that you feel like aren't getting the attention that they deserve, or deserve more attention than they're getting right now, that you want to call out, that could be a cool way to end this.
Yeah. Wow, that's always a good question. Man, that is really hard. New probably would make more sense. Well, I have a friend in Nashville who has this project called Skyway Man, and he just put out a record. I think it's great and one of the best records of the year, and people should buy it. And then there's a jazz guitarist named Mary Halverson who I think is just stunning. Who I really, really love what she does. But she's pretty. I mean, she gets press, but I don't know. I would say I wish more young people listen to jazz. I feel like it's like they're the guys who have the best chops, and they usually play to the smallest crowds.
Yeah.
But, that's just the nature of complicated music, I guess.
Yeah, it's appreciated a lot by a little bit of the population.
Right, exactly.
Cool. Well, tell us, what's the best way to find your music?
Well, I mean, everything's kind of... I have WilliamTyler.net as my site. I don't have a lot of music for sale. I don't really have music for sale there, but it's kind of a portal to all the connections.
It's a good starting place as any.
I mean, honestly, probably Spotify, iTunes. I mean, I don't really use Spotify, but that's probably where I have the best potential to reach different people. Yeah, I don't know. It's out there. I just feel like it's out there. It's out there on YouTube, and it's just in the collective ephemeral internet world.
Yeah. More of it now.
And even more of it now. That's what we're just generating content.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this has been really fun. I hope you had a good time.
I did have a very good time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for listening and watching A Fistful of Vinyl. William Tyler, I'd ask you to applaud if anybody else were in the room. Let's go get some ramen.
Okay,
my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
And my leg's asleep. Yeah. All right.
That's a painful feeling.
It will be. I think I got about 10 seconds of... Oh, here it comes.
Oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
There's the needles.
There's the needles.
Oh, boy. All right. Shall we have an interview?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Are we going to do it in here?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I might get some water before we do that, actually, if that's cool.
Not okay.
Yeah.
Not okay and pretentious of you to ask. These artists and their fucking egos, man.
Yeah, right.